Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, where we share some of the eeriest real-life encounters from around the world. Today we're diving into a chilling story from Ontario, Canada, where one family's home has been anything but ordinary. From unexplainable shadows to a mysterious old man's spirit, this house has left its occupants with more than a few sleepless nights. So grab a warm drink, sit back, and let's explore what exactly has been lurking in the shadows of this otherwise typical house. This story starts when our narrator moved into a cozy 1970s built home in a small Canadian town. It was just them and their dad, ready to make a new start. From the outside, it looked like a typical suburban house, nothing unusual. But right from the beginning, they couldn't shake a strange feeling. The narrator recalls that the first day they moved in, there was an unexplainable vibe. It wasn't anything too obvious, but it was there. Still, they brushed it off, thinking it was just new house jitters. But over the following months, those little feelings of unease turned into something they could no longer ignore. One of the first things they noticed was that items would mysteriously move around. Papers would be relocated to different parts of the house with no explanation. The most unsettling incident involved the narrator's late grandmother's death certificate. It had been placed on one table, but when they returned home one day, it was on a completely different table. Now, only two people lived there, and neither had moved it. Things like this happened regularly, and it didn't take long before both of them were catching glimpses of shadows at the corners of their eyes. In the kitchen, they'd feel a presence, something watching them close enough to make them turn around, only to find nothing. As time passed, the activity escalated. One night, about 2 years after moving in, the narrator had an experience that would stay with them forever. It was late, and they were lying in bed, half awake, when they saw their father get up and go downstairs. The narrator's room was right across the hall from their dad's, so they had a clear view of his doorway. But instead of seeing their father, they saw a white, cloud-like figure drift into his room, and then slam. The door suddenly shut, making the narrator's heart pound with fear. They thought their dad had shut the door, so they shouted at him to keep it down. Moments later, their father walked back upstairs, confused. He hadn't gone into his room at all, let alone slammed the door. As they pieced together what happened, they realized something else. That door couldn't just swing shut on its own. It was set at such a weird angle that it would only stay closed if someone physically pushed it. The sightings didn't stop there. About 4 years into living there, the narrator woke up in the dead of night and saw something that shook them to the core. A face. At the foot of their bed was an old man's face, crystal clear, staring at them intently. His face had a strange blue tint, and he looked entirely out of place. Terrified, the narrator hid under the covers, hoping they'd just imagined it. They eventually fell back asleep, but the experience left them questioning who or what they had seen. 2 years later, the mystery of the old man finally unraveled. In a conversation with a neighbor, they learned that one of the previous owners had passed away in the house from a heart attack. He was an older man, which lined up with the face the narrator had seen. It seemed they were sharing their home with the spirit of a past resident who was just checking in. But the story doesn't end there. The more time they spent in the house, the more they realized that there were more than just the spirit of the old man lingering around. The narrator's cousin, who was friends with the previous owner's children, confirmed the house's haunted reputation. Before the narrator even mentioned anything, their cousin asked if they knew about the house's supernatural activity. This wasn't just something their family was experiencing, it had been happening for years. While the old man's spirit didn't seem harmful, the narrator had seen other, more disturbing things. There were shadowy figures that didn't seem quite human, almost alien-like. Unlike the old man's presence, these entities didn't give off a just visiting feeling. They felt different. Darker. The basement, in particular, was a hotbed for these strange encounters. Though it was a finished room, not the usual creepy, unfinished basement, there was an inexplicably heavy energy there. The family cat was obsessed with it, often batting at the air, as if something unseen was playing with her. But it wasn't just the cat. Everyone who went down there felt it, that strange vibe. No one could last more than a few months living in the basement. Tenants would always leave, and the narrator's sister, who briefly lived there, had some terrifying experiences she didn't even want to discuss. Several times, the narrator thought about turning the basement into their own bedroom. But each time they reconsidered, and after all, they couldn't shake the feeling that the basement was not just haunted by the spirit of the old man, but perhaps something darker and less human. Despite all these experiences, the narrator doesn't feel in danger, at least not from the old man. He's become a familiar part of the house. They believe he's just keeping an eye on things, like an old homeowner who can't quite let go. But the other entities, they're still a mystery. So what would you do if you were in their shoes? Would you try to communicate with the old man? Or would you steer clear of the basement, hoping whatever's lurking there stays in the shadows? Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more eerie tales from around the world. And if you have your own chilling encounter you'd like to share, drop us a message. We might just feature it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back.